The room smelled of cigar smoke and expensive ink. Outside, Europe was exhausted, scarred cities, silent guns, starving families. Inside, powerful men signed a treaty. They called it peace, but the lines on the paper didn't promise healing. They screamed revenge, humiliation, and economic ruin. The world breathed a sigh of relief, oblivious that the next war was already scheduled. And history textbooks. They lied, making it look accidental. Soldiers returned home, walking through rubble where villages once stood. Millions were dead, economies broken, families starving. The leaders in charge didn't want peace, they wanted punishment. Humiliation as justice, debt as morality. The treaty wasn't about healing, it was about control. Writing the next chapter of suffering, Europe didn't need guidance, it needed mercy, and no one gave it. The defeated nation wasn't invited to negotiate, they were handed a document and told, "Sign this, or watch your country collapse." The treaty demanded total war guilt, massive reparations, territory losses, military restrictions, and one line made the rest worse. "You caused this war, you are responsible for everything." One paragraph, and an entire nation's pride was stolen. Humiliated nations do not quietly rebuild. They burn with anger, seethe in shame, seek revenge dressed as justice. Imagine generations raised to believe, our suffering was planned by those above us, we will fix it. Moderates were silenced, extremists thrived. The treaty didn't heal wounds, it opened them wider. Punishment disguised as peace is a blueprint for war. The treaty demanded impossible payments, governments printed money. Inflation skyrocketed, savings evaporated. Families burned cash to stay warm. People starved, factories closed. Desperation spread like wildfire, extremists found an audience. The treaty didn't just humiliate, it bankrupted an entire society. Some leaders saw it coming. They said, "This will radicalize the defeated. This will destabilize Europe. Another war is inevitable." But their voices were drowned by revenge, ego, and blind satisfaction. Peace was declared, no one noticed the clock ticking. The treaty became propaganda, extremists didn't need to lie. They simply pointed to reality, national humiliation, economic collapse, lost territories. They said, "See what they did to us, justice is on our side, war is our duty." Millions listened, millions obeyed, millions died again. The treaty had done its real work. It prepared the battlefield for a second war. Millions of soldiers died. Millions more civilians starved or were displaced. Empires crumbled. All because leaders thought humiliation could replace justice, and revenge could be disguised as peace. Every signature, every clause, every calculation of justice was a ticking time bomb. The peace that promised safety delivered catastrophe. Textbooks tell you the next war was inevitable. No, it was engineered. Peace built on humiliation is never stable. Punishment disguised as law is always temporary. The treaty wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. A deliberate choice that prioritized ego over life. Every line of the treaty was a countdown to destruction. The Second War didn't come from nowhere, it came from paper, signatures, and arrogance. Peace written in anger is not peace. Millions dead, empires broken, generations scarred. The world grew tired of watching. At first, there was sympathy, then annoyance, then indifference. We gave them terms. They signed. Let them deal with it. Warnings were called propaganda. History rarely collapses suddenly. It normalizes disaster. The lie that became a movement. Extremists did not invent suffering. They weaponized it. They spoke to the unemployed, to the humiliated, to the veterans, to the forgotten. They pointed to the treaty. This is your enemy. This is your proof. This is your permission. They promised order. They promised pride. They promised revenge dressed as justice. And for the first time in years, people listened. The world mistook noise for stability. As long as borders held and trade continued, foreign powers relaxed. The rallies grew larger. The symbols more aggressive. Internal politics. Temporary anger. Nothing serious. History does not announce itself clearly. It murmurs until it screams. When desperation meets opportunity, economic collapse returned with global force. Jobs vanished again. Hope collapsed again. Fear became permanent. Extremism did not need to convince anymore. It only needed to absorb. Votes followed hunger. Power followed chaos. The system that had been forced to accept humiliation now handed authority to those who promised to erase it. Democracy did not fall in a coup. It surrendered. The treaty became a justification, not a cause. By now, the treaty was no longer the wound. It was the story, a symbol, a rallying cry, a justification for expansion, militarization, and defiance. Each violation of the treaty was framed as self-defense, each protest as hypocrisy, each warning as weakness. And the world hesitated again, because punishing aggression meant admitting the original peace had failed. No one wanted to admit that. Rearmament in plain sight. Factories reopened, quietly at first. Training resumed unofficially. Uniforms returned redesigned. Each step tested the world's reaction. There was none. Every ignored violation became permission for the next. Peace treaties only work if they are enforced or rewritten. This one was neither. Alliances shifted, fear spread, neighbors panicked, old enemies rearmed, trust evaporated. The continent entered a silent arms race, each nation preparing for a war it pretended not to see. Diplomacy turned into delay, delay turned into denial. Everyone remembered the last war. No one wanted to start the next. That fear became the final advantage. By the time the world realized what was happening, the machinery was already built. Not overnight, not suddenly. Brick by brick, speech by speech, crisis by crisis. The treaty that was meant to end war had done the opposite. It had taught how to justify the next one. The war did not begin with tanks crossing borders. It began with signatures, silence, and the belief that punishment equals peace. The treaty did not fail because it was ignored. It failed because it was obeyed exactly as written. How the treaty turned anger into a machine? The ink dried. The cameras left. The world moved on. But the defeated nation did not heal. It rotted quietly. The treaty did not end suffering, it organized it. Factories reopened with no money. Schools taught children a future that no longer existed. Veterans sat in silence, medals in drawers, legs missing, pride shattered. They had not lost a war alone, they had lost dignity. And dignity, once stripped, does not fade. It mutates. A nation forced to confess forever. The treaty demanded more than money. It demanded a confession, permanent, public, humiliating. Every history book, every classroom, every international meeting. You did this, you alone, you will pay. Children learned guilt before geography. Teenagers learned shame before hope. A generation grew up believing the world would never forgive them. So forgiveness stopped mattering. When guilt becomes inherited, rage becomes rational. The collapse no one wanted to see. The economy did not fall, it was pushed. Reparations were calculated without mercy or realism. The numbers were political weapons. To pay them, the government printed money. To print money, it destroyed value. To destroy value, it destroyed trust. Inflation turned wages into jokes, savings into ashes, life into improvisation. A loaf of bread cost more by sunset than it did in the morning. People were paid twice a day, not because they were rich, but because money expired by nightfall. Old men watched their life's work become useless paper. Young men watched their future evaporate. And when people lose faith in money, they lose faith in everything. Order died before democracy did. The political system was fragile, built on compromise, fear, and exhaustion. Democracy arrived not as a celebration, but as a consolation prize. This is what remains. Extremes smelled blood. On one side, revolution promised revenge. On the other, nationalism promised rebirth. The middle, calm voices, careful thinkers, were drowned out by hunger and humiliation. Democracy requires patience. Hunger does not wait. Veterans without a war, men without a place. Millions of soldiers returned to civilian life with no jobs, no support, and no respect. They had marched for an empire that no longer existed. They had bled for a nation now accused of criminality. Many joined paramilitary groups, not for ideology, but for belonging. Uniforms were replaced by armbands, orders by slogans, purpose by rage. Violence became routine, streets became battlegrounds, politics became a knife fight. Peace existed only on paper. The treaty fractured more than one country. Borders were redrawn by men who had never lived there. Villages woke up in new nations overnight. Languages were outlawed. Minorities were reclassified as problems. Families were split. Trade routes collapsed. Old rivalries hardened. The treaty planted instability everywhere, not just in the defeated nation, but across the continent.